Hey, what's up, everybody? You're now tuned in live to Super Heru Radio. I'm your host, Heru Tears. I'm my co-host, Selena, Empress of 10,000 Years, Saga Sai, my brother, Shari, Amor.
Hi.
He says hi. And all of you, wonderful, beautiful, original Asiatic people, as well as those people, and specifically Asiatic, anybody that's supporting the Super Heru fam is definitely on the right track. So, I hope everybody's week has been good. There are a lot of different things going on, of course. And as we always do, we start with the basic shit and then move it up to the more intricate. So, I don't know about y'all, but I came from the era where bath salts used to mean like shit you used to put in your bath. You used to buy for your girl on Valentine's Day to put on a bath so that way she could have a little, aromatic therapy. Aromatic therapy. Nowadays, bath salts, they seem to turn into this new sort of cocktail melange of excessively potent excessively potent chemicals that are literally driving people insane, or to the part, maybe I'm being too harsh. If you don't find trying to eat somebody's flesh insane, then maybe that's not what the bath salt is doing. But if you find flesh-eating cannibals as a form of insanity, as a form of drug-induced sanity, then insanity, then definitely this bath salt thing is definitely a big thing. Now the question is, where do these things come from, right? Where's this stuff coming from? Now, like everything else, any of these so-called designer or newfangled drugs that's coming out are basically all byproducts of drugs that maybe were unapproved or either unapproved by the FDA that found their way into the United States through some of the illegal pharmaceutical channels that basically opened up, or it's a straight government op thing where they just putting it out there and people are just ingesting these things. But the symptoms of it all tend to be characteristically the same. And in the process of that, I also think what it is a precursor to, again, this whole pseudo-zombie apocalypse scenario that they've been trying to pop off for a couple of months now. This is also interesting because I was watching one of these CNN episodes or whatever, and they were lying. But in one of the lies, they told a real good truth, and they said how they found that most of the ingredients in terms of the distribution of the bath salts is coming by way of Mexico, right? Specifically through what they call the Arizona corridor, right? So I found that interesting just due to the fact that Mexico is also going through one of the bloodiest civil wars that they ever have gone through in their country's history. This whole drug cartel war that they're talking to you about is not what's going on specifically. Yes, you got drug cartels that are at war with the government, but what's really going on is that a lot of these cartels are old partners with the United States, going all the way back to the days of the Iran-Contra, all that other type of shit. And in the process of them being down with that from back in the days, they solidified these relationships and basically set up these cartels. The cartels that were set up through these basically drug-induced and drug-fueled relationships had their beginnings in the so-called war on drugs that started or was initiated by President Ronald Reagan. Once Ronald Reagan put out the war on drugs, the money to pay for that war had to be brought out of the people who were going to be the first casualties. So the people who would be the first casualties of that war on drugs were the first group of people out there in California that CIA decided to start to sell crack and teach how to make crack cocaine to. Now, if you ask yourself a question like, if crack was so predominant in the black community, then who was the first nigga who came out with crack and learned how to cook it and break it down with the baking soda, all that, knowing damn well that most of our youth at that time was not even taking AP chemistry more so than calculus or anything else to learn how to create and put these components together. So the question again is, where did they get the right or the know-how to cook the crack to do that? Now, crack existed in the 70s and the 80s But back then, in the 70s, it wasn't called crack. It was called freebase. So those people who were into freebase were basically the ones who were basically smoking heroin and shit, right? So we know that drugs are always used by a government or any ruling body to control another. Like all ruling governments, specifically those patterned after the Western model, all had their own ways of taking control and mind controlling they populace with hallucinogenic drugs and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So I think I did this a long time ago, maybe a couple of years ago, but each basically ancient culture section had why they did it. So like the Romans, who basically were worshiping really the highest Roman god was really Ethos, or I should say Zeus, right? But let's say the highest goddess then is Venus, since we talk about war. Venus is the goddess that's always invoked in war, even though she's the god of love, occultists, and people who are in the arcane arts like that, who always know how to invoke energies of non-physical entities to come and help them in battle. They all know that when it comes to fighting wars, you never want to have Mars on your side, because Mars on your side ritualistically is going to make the war more bloody, and it's going to make it more indefinite. It's going to drag it out, because the god of war, Ares, or Mars in that sense, is basically, very, very much about prolonging the inevitable sometimes, right? But then on the other part, there's a little different. So what they realized was that in order to make the war, that people believe in the wholesomeness or the purity of whatever war in question, what the people would do is always would invoke Venus. So in the process of that has not changed from the times of Rome to now. But not only did they invoke and do stuff like that, you have to understand that mind control practices and the practice of dissociating one's identity from its original, from its initial alter is something that is a perpetual aspect of physical reality here. When you incarnate into physical reality, everything here is trying to get you to believe that this physical reality is all that is, or that it is the best thing that you will ever experience. And it is pretty good. But it's not better than having a soul, you know what I'm saying? It's not better than, it's not so good that you would sell your soul to stay here is what I'm saying. Or I would hope. So specifically speaking, then we have all of these different things that come into play when you start dealing with how governments control their people. So being that we're dealing with one of the most craziest governments in doing that, let's look historically at how it happened. So like I said, the Romans would invoke Venus through Ethos or whatever. But to really control the people, they would use potions, they would use tortures, they would use blood ritual, they would use imprisonment, pseudo-torture techniques, as well as constant propaganda. Rome was one place of constant propaganda. Sound familiar? It does to me too. Then there was ancient China. Now China, in its infancy, in its initial stages, was set up basically through the original Shinto religion, right? Now Shinto, going all the way back to ancient China, that's all about the original man, okay? All of that. So China is that. So China used to do the same thing, but they used to use, instead of using potions and stuff, they would use more like torture, herbs specifically, animal parts and stuff like that. And what you call it, as well as mutilation and organ harvesting. They were very, very big on that. That's why you could go to China and there's almost a magical property that can be attached to almost any animal or living thing. That's why the Chinese don't cut themselves off from nothing. They eat literally everything out there. And I'm not trying to say that they facetious or try to shit on Chinese people. I'm just saying their diet is crazy. You don't see no dogs in China. You don't see no cats in China. You don't see no people walking with dogs. Again, because you don't walk food. You know what I'm saying? So in that, everything is up for grabs over there. You understand? Whereas over here in America, the same thing is the same. Like, you can eat everything that you eat over there. It's just that over here, Americans have fooled themselves based on the white supremacy shit to believe that they're a lot more civilized than they are. So that creates a false sense of superiority in the people who really are dealing with a sense of global inferiority based upon the pressure climaxes and crises that they find themselves in. So specifically, that's how China did it. Then if we look at the Incas, the Mayas, the Aztecs, right, we're also dealing with potions, herbs, skin scarification or skin carving, as well as sacrifice and tattooing. You know what I'm saying? That was another way that they did it. You know what I mean? India, or ancient Hindustan, and Indians, or Dravidia, or ancient Bombay, they used to do Tantra oils, Kama Sutra, as well as blood rituals of sacrifice. And then the American so-called Indians, meaning the Moors, the indigenous, those of us here, the Montauk, Shinnecock, Choctaw, Chickasaw, you know, we basically was doing the same thing with body paint, piercing, drumming, smoking, and blood rituals. You know what I'm saying? Not necessarily human sacrificial blood rituals, but rituals in which bloodletting and blood sacrifice was used. You know what I'm saying? Just like when those people who are vulgar and they come into consciousness and they hear about things like voodoo and things like that, what you have to understand is that voodoo is not, or voodoo is not native to the United States. The magical practice that is indigenous, let's say, specifically to the United States is an aspect of voodoo, which is called hoodoo, Hoodoo, or hoodoo, or hogan, Houngan. You know what I'm saying? The manifestations of these, the real aspect of hoodoo and stuff like that, have its beginnings with the insistence of melanated sexual dominance as a means to perpetuate the ascendancy of primordial man into his true spiritual occupation. Therefore, a lot of the early voodoo stuff, like when you look at Legba, for instance, right, and you start to do the knowledge to the origins again of how Legba or whatever manifests and what he comes from, right? What we are looking at when we look at him specifically, right, is another version of something that they refer to, or somebody that they refer to as Horned God, the Lord of the Hunt. He is also the bull god, right? Now, if you remember, probably not, because not everybody like Kid Rock, but Kid Rock had a song back in the days called I Am the Bull God, in which he basically was invoking Legba, trying to say that he was Legba or that. So the bull god Legba is seen in the ancient Kano cosmogony, as well as the old school voodoo stuff that was in Dahomey, right, where a lot of this stuff comes from. Dahomey is now what you would call the Ivory Coast. And back then, they had him depicted as a black man sitting down in a throne, or a stool-type throne, and he has two black horns coming out of his head like bull horns. The horn at the tip is kind of lighter or white, and then the shaft of the horn is black, symbolizing the penis. And then he's usually sat with both hands, you always depicted as a black man, sitting down enthroned, his hands on his knees, with an erect penis and heavy, with an erect phallus and hanging testicles, like they hang it real low. He has a beard, and he's usually adorned in gold. Now, this was an ancient or old symbol, again, of the old Hogan or hoodoo type people over here that was already here in America, who already had ties to the ancient Sumerian versions of that, because the Sumerian version of Legba, or the bull god, or what they said the Lord God, the bull god, is, what's his name? The other name for him, I'm sorry, I had a brain fart. like I said, leg bar, any sexual aspect. They call it. They used to also call him in what do you call it? Cosmogony. In Western occultism, they'll refer to him as the Green Man sometimes. The Green Man is another version of Legba. He's also a version of Osar, but then Osar as the head of the gods in a sense. You know what I'm saying? Legba is the head of the, you know what I mean? Budun system is kind of running in tandem, I should say. But I bring all of that up because this is the reason why the society is so sexualized. Oh, that's what I was going to say. In Sumeria, or ancient Sumer, or Sumeria, or Elam, the horn of god Legba was also known as Nimrod. You know what I'm saying? Because he had the neem in the rod. Neem is a principle in the Kabbalah that corresponds to one of the Sephiroth. You know what I'm saying? But also, because we made those delineations back then in terms of the sciences, it really wasn't about so much like saying, okay, this is like by this one. It just says that's the name that he was spoken of as that in Samaria, whereas if you came over here, then they would have been calling the same energy of that deity something different. See what I'm saying? It's really about us, making the geographic location localized to us instead of us localizing ourselves to whatever geographic location we find ourselves in. And this is essentially the issue or the problem, you know what I mean, is that due to the fact that we lack the origin places of how these things come into existence, we don't see the corresponding energy of the deity, which is really an archetypical manifestation of who and what we originally were and are. You understand? So to worship a mystery God is not the way to obtaining knowledge of God. The way, at least in my opinion, in my research, the knowledge of God that you accumulate is a lifelong thing. You know what I'm saying? So when people say, oh, yeah, well, I was initiated in this, initiated in that, you got to remember, we are all initiated into the grand lodge of life. We are all initiated into the spiritual representation of taking our soul from a non-physical point to a physical point, and then going from the physical point back to the non-physical point. So we're here to be here, but we're not here to stay. So whenever you have instances in which you have people who realize that they don't have nothing other than this, what they would try to do is make this thing seem like end-all to be-all all existence. And really it doesn't even represent 0.001% of what all creation of physical life is. So we have to be vigilant that we don't give up the genetic markers that exist within us that declares who and what we are in terms of a genetic nationality, being connected to that supreme kingdom that goes all the way back to the what they call the summoning or the awakening of the consciousness, and what scientists refer as the Big Bang. So yes, we are born on Earth and we're indigenous. You know what I'm saying? In fact, we manifested here and incarnated as Earth with melanin, but at the same time, we are more indigenous to creation itself than the Earth. You dig what I mean? Because the more limitation you put on yourself here, the more that limitation manifests into something that keeps the spirit bound here. And the idea is to let loose of all of those things that are and keep you locked down, specifically based upon the ideologies of inferior men and women who do not have your best interest in mind, who do not have a clear understanding of what their purpose is, but they're quick to tell you what your purpose is. I never try to assume that I know somebody based upon any readings that I may do for them, whether it be tarot reading, natal reading, numerology, whatever. What I am reading is the aspected energy that manifests itself from you as a collective representation of who you are archetypically. If you were a physical being that would exist in a three-dimensional space that we call Earth now. But the real you is on the other side of this place, projecting this image of you here now. That's why sometimes you feel like you're kind of witnessing your life instead of living it. That's why sometimes you just get depressed for no reason. And every time you try to come out of it, the more you're surrounded by unlike energy, the more you feel like you're almost in prison. This is also why when you really get conscious and then you start to really deal with other conscious people, you see just how unconscious a lot of conscious people are. because, in my opinion, we're getting it twisted. We're trying to save people who don't want to be saved. We're trying to position ourselves in people's lives who don't necessarily want us there in the capacity that we are in now. They want what you used to be. They want the afterthought of you, the memory of who you were when you were with them. That is who they have a relationship with. When you look at a picture of yourself as a child, as a baby, essentially what you have to do is create a story about that picture to justify who and what you were in that picture. But the story don't necessarily come from the memory. The story actually manifests from the visual stimulation of the image presented to you. But the memory may not be accurate. In the memory, you might have had on purple pants, but when you see the picture, you see that the pants is orange. You see what I'm saying? It depends on your perception and knowledge of yourself, because you and I are held accountable for the things that we say we're going to say and do, not by what somebody else said. So even if the devil got a witness against you, that witness got to be representable enough for you to be able, for them to be able to trust this witness's word over yours. Everybody knows that society is racist, right? Everybody knows that America is built on racism and the exploitation of anybody that was not white. Everybody know that. So why, if I say that now, somehow or another, I'm harping on the past, so I'm not letting shit go? When it's the same people that was fucking it up in 228 years ago, they descendants is the same one fucking it up now. So how has anything changed from then to now? It hasn't, right? But it doesn't pay to maintain integrity about something that most people nowadays don't give a fuck about. Not to be vulgar. Excuse me for any children listening, but sometimes you gotta, say certain things like that for people to really hear what you're saying. All of the time that we have spent here in America has been about reawakening as to who and what you are and what we were prior to this thing coming into existence here. Everything that you are doing here, everything that you incarnate here to figure out, is already here. You know what I'm saying? It's already manifested. But what you and I get caught up in is the camaraderie aspect of people, the idea of the people, right? The proverbial people, looking out for them, right? Making sure that they have the same type of knowledge you do, right? But that is not the case. We could have a classroom of 9 kids, and each one of them 9 kids gets the same exact attention that every other kid in the class gets. They get the same amount of time, the same amount of food, the same clothes, the same this, the same that, everything, right? Equality. And guess what? You will still have some kids, regardless of what, that's going to score higher than other kids, and some kids that's going to be more caught up with the information than other kids, and some kids that just don't want to have nothing to do with it, because the human psyche or the human condition is to break through bonds and boundaries, man. It's to set them up and knock them down. You know what I'm saying? So when you incarnate here to do something, maybe you and your soulmate or your friend on the other side of reality, universe B, say, hey, I want to incarnate and learn what it's like not to be selfish, right? So, boom, that person says, okay, and I'm going to help you do that, right? That's the agreement that you made with this twin soul. But when you incarnate here, all bets is off with that. You still want to try to learn that, but you got to remember the fact that you even made a bet like that in the first place. So maybe when you get here, you want to learn what it's like not to be selfish. But maybe what that translates to in physical reality is you have to incarnate and be a selfish person to get put in a position to learn what it's like not to be that. Just like you may incarnate here and say, hey, I want to learn what it's like to appreciate physical life. So that means, boom, you incarnate here, right? And then the other person says, yo, I want to appreciate what it's like to appreciate where we are right now, which essentially is the opposite of life, so it would be the afterlife, which is death, right? So let's say both souls incarnate. That soul that incarnated here to learn the value of life may actually be the person to kill the person who wants to learn about death physically down here. Why? Because when you incarnate down here, everything gets switched up because this is about duality. So the lessons that you learn, you internalize by yourself, but you learn them with the help of someone else. So if you want to learn the value of life and how important life is, then maybe you incarnate here to be somebody who doesn't like life or at the time and chooses to take it. Then you come across another soul who really doesn't appreciate life and wants to understand what death is like. So karma happens where both these people meet because they were both two twin souls or two souls who agreed to have this type of experience, and then one clapped the other one. And then the one who dies wound up realizing the absolute truth of death, while the one who is living now has to deal with the fact that he killed somebody, which then gives him an appreciation for life. There are many ways to look at an occult situation. And for anybody to act like just because they read a couple of so-called books or put shit out there or have an understanding on pH and things like that, for them to actually put it out there like they understand the actual nuances of the macabre are really, really putting themselves and other people in heavy predicaments, man. You got niggas that's writing great books. Now, I'm reading these dudes, and I'm like, yo, you ain't write that. If you did, you wouldn't be ingesting that cow's blood in a ritual that's poisoning your stomach. You know what I'm saying? Because if you did, you wouldn't be trying to exploit people who come to you for help, for relationship counseling or whatever else. And instead of trying to help them, you're trying to break them up so that way you can have sex with the girl. Like, there's a lot of that type of shit going on, and it's not just in the consciousness community. This has been going on in the black community since we've been calling ourselves black here. And we don't have no handle to deal with it. So obviously it's not going to get dealt with. So all I'm saying is, for order for us to really get what we need to get, let's agree that not all of us want the same thing, man. And not all of us are doing this for the same reason. You know what I'm saying? People are doing this shit for alternative reasons that have nothing to do with the people. And that's okay. You know what I'm saying? That's still okay. Because, like I said, you or I do not have the right to judge anybody based upon what they incarnated here to figure out amongst themselves. You just can't put yourself in a position to have that shit apply to you that becomes a detriment to you, that then puts you in a position to wind up having to fall victim to what this person's true intent was. But because you was trying to help them, or because you was trying to save them, or because you felt a little bit more compassionate than you needed to about the situation or the person. Because some people become addicted to helping people. That's another addiction, too. Where you helping people so much, where you enabling them. You ain't letting them do nothing themselves. So you just as bad as not helping them, because you put them in a position to feel like you always going to be there for them, and that's a lie. You know what I'm saying? So we got to do the knowledge to that. So, of course, like I was saying, with all these different potions and tinctures and ways of controlling society, this has been how Western society has been progressing itself into the future since the fall of the Roman state. You know what I'm saying? But again, America, Western world, is not founded on the Roman state. It's founded on the principles left behind by the Holy Roman Empire, and those were original black people. Henry the Duke of Bavaria, Edward the Black. You know what I'm saying? St. Corvinus, who they tried to turn into a vampire in the movie Underworld. St. Corvinus, he's the saint that you see on the coat of arms for the Pope out of the Vatican. Why was he dope? Was because he was traveling across the Alps in Bavaria, in Freising. The word freezing comes from the word Freising, and Freising in Germany was where the original Vatican used to be. That was, again, set up by St. Corvinus, again, a Coptic or Franciscan Moor who was traveling across the Alps, and his horse was attacked by a bear. Well, the homie wound up getting off the horse and wound up getting in such a thing with the bear that he wound up civilizing and holding the bear down, put the saddle on the bear's back, and then rode the bear into the town. And then when he got there, he took the saddlebag or whatever off the bear, smacked the bear in the ass. The bear goes back like a dog. From that point on, they created the coat of arms to always celebrate Corvinus's power over the bear. But the bear also represents Ursa Major. Ursa Major is the star constellation that coincides with the founding of not only the Russian state, but what we would consider the Holy Roman Empire, going all the way back to the Battle of Tours in 800 A.D. So when we talk about the Franciscans, when we talk about the Normans or the Normans, when we talk about the Danes, when we talk about the Portuguese, when we talk about, Portuguese, when we talk about the Scotians or the Scottish, we talk about all black Moorish people in the beginning. So again, these people that are adopting that culture now and living that culture now, that's cool. And it's okay that they do that because they still upholding it. But you got to understand, if you don't know that you are the archetype or the precursor to that, you dig what I'm saying? Then they'll always play you like that was their spot and that you always a visitor. And really, they just hope you never remember where your house lives, where your house was, or where your car is. So with that, also, we got a moon that just passed on June 19th. It was real heavy. It was in Gemini, again, a new moon in Gemini, and as it was, it's represented as a portal moon. You know what I'm saying? Because the second new moon in Gemini that's going to start, that started on May 20th, you know what I mean, had a solar eclipse at 0 degrees Gemini. So we went from a cosmic stance where we went from one state to a whole other state of being in consciousness. This also coincided with the magnetic poles of the planet shifting again. You know what I'm saying? So whereas it used to be, the meridian used to be in, I think, Greenwich, England, then it switched from there to Canada. Now it's in Russia. Show you how quick shit is switching up. So, again, on June 24th, which is yesterday, Uranus and Pluto made a square, right? The day after, which is today, Saturn turns direct, you know what I mean? And for about 2 days, between now and the 27th, Venus is going to be direct, too, you know what I mean? So it's going to be real interesting because Venus and Saturn, in the sense of working together, is kind of like Ike and Tina Turner. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'll make great music, but somebody's going to get beat up in the process. You know what I mean? So this is why, again, you're seeing some of the things go down. Like right now, your man Sandusky or whatever, the dude who raped all of them little boys in Penn State University. Now the floodgate is open for all the lawsuits to start coming through. All the lawsuits is coming through now because, again, he's found guilty on everything because, again, he incriminated himself. But part of me feel like he incriminated himself to protect the other niggas because I don't feel like he was the only one involved. I feel like they all was involved with that because ritualistically that was a ritual that them people in them things was down with. This whole having sex with students thing, this teacher thing or whatever, you having sex with students, you have to understand this is a bastardized, westernized version of an old Vatican Catholic concept called pedestry. You understand? You ain't never gonna get no Catholic priest in America indicted for pedophilia or whatever that, because technically that's a part of their religion. That's a part of how they consecrate their priests, man. How many times have you seen movies about Catholic schools of people growing up in Catholic schools and the nuns is beating the shit out of everybody and the fathers is drunks and all this other type of shit? Again, you can't get mad at me or you or anybody else for not dealing with that Catholic stuff and knowing that all of that again is pedestry, man. If you don't believe me, look into the roots of pedestry. Google pedestry and look into pedestry of the roots of the Catholic Church and see what you see. All right? So him being done in basically allowed the rest of them people who was eating and having sex with them boys or whatever to get off. That's why I feel like right after he came out and got busted and all that, that's when Jer Paterno died right away. Now, paterno comes from patrius, the Latin paternal, right, which comes from the Latin patrius, meaning of the father, coming from the father. So here, what did they say? They said that Sardusky used to treat the kids like he was their what? Like he was their father. What do you call a Catholic priest when you go into confessional or whatever? You call him father, right? You see what I'm saying? All of this shit has a beginning, and it has a method to the madness if you can take yourself out of it, and as opposed to how you feel about it, and look at how it is affecting the world and those people who are allegedly involved with it. You know what I'm saying? So on top of that, a group of American citizens, like I said last week in city.gov, order.gov, have put up and trying to create a petition that is an anti-kill list for the kill list that this dude has already put out there. Now, you have to understand, these kill lists don't just deal with people in foreign policy. This deal with anybody in any strata of society that they're trying to get rid of for whatever reason. So how you know Whitney wasn't on that list? How you know what's-his-name wasn't on that list? Don and the rest of these niggas, you don't know? What, because they black? We got a black president? Like, that's out of the realm of possibility? Come on, man. To me, it's even more plausible that somebody like that would agree to do things like that just, again, to keep the United States in flux, because the real thing that's going down, like I said, is that the world is drawing a line in the sand against the United States. This is what it is. The rest of the world wants to move away from dollar bills as a means to pay debts. They don't want to use dollar bills no more because it ain't backed by nothing, and the only people who benefit from that are the Anglo establishments. People are fed up. They done. So you have countries that are now trying to do that. So countries like Germany, that's run by Amanda Merkel, who allegedly is the great-great-granddaughter of Adolf Hitler, or another one of the granddaughters of Adolf Hitler. You know how they do, preserve their bloodline shit. This is what it is. They are now coming out and saying that they're going to bail Greece out and all the rest of this shit, but to keep it real with you, Greece, or the Greek state, is totally not with it anymore. But they got to stay in the EU now, because if they don't, then if they leave, that means the United States then is going to flip and try to gobble them up. So basically what I'm alluding to or getting at is that there are basically going to be two forms of government that run this so-called New World. There are going to be those governments that are connected to the New World governments, and there are going to be those governments that are connected to the Christ consciousness type government. But these Christ consciousness governments, as a manifestation, can only come online when those of us who realize that we are of the body of Christ come into that understanding. And astrological placements like this with Saturn and Venus direct right now, that's a heavy, heavy energy, man. You know what I mean? So that's the energy of, again, man and woman partnership. So look in the news media now for different situations that manifest where men or women or men within families may take a real extreme stance against the other aspect of the family, meaning the mother of the family. So, like, if you hear of any stories that's going to pop between now and the end of the week about, like, fathers killing their wives or mothers killing their husbands or like some type of, like, adultery thing that's coming out, now is the time for scandals to kind of, like, burgeon on the community and shit. So you got to watch out, especially if you're involved in them. Any niggas with bones and shit in their closet right now, you better start to put some flesh on them or something, because they're about to all get aired out. You know what I'm saying? And this is also a time where the luster of a lot of the hype of things is starting to kind of wear off on people. So people who may have been 6-7 months ago real hype, real caught up in whatever movement or whatever they was a part of, now is the time when they're starting to slow down and realize that it's not all what it's cracked up to be, and that a lot of the shit connected with what it is they thought was popping is not really it. I was just going through that today with these damn book publishers. It seems every day is a new charge, it's a new cost. And when you're paying for everything yourself, you know what I'm saying, to maintain the integrity of whatever project you're doing, you know, it's like you got to listen with 3 ears. You know what I mean? And two in your head and your eyes. So this is a time to practice active listening. This is also a time to practice not reacting to people, not falling into what people expect of you all the damn time. You know what I'm saying? This is a time in which you have to know what you're talking about instead of just feeling like you know what you're talking about. That's why right now a lot of dialogue between you and people who you may have been speaking to 3-4 months ago, maybe every other day or whatever, it's now trickling out to maybe speak to these people like once every 2 months. You know what I'm saying? That's because the octaves are raising to such a degree that bullshit cannot maintain energy that's not bullshit. So if you are a real dude, then it's going to be harder, that much harder for you to be around anybody that's not building with real shit. If you're a fake person, then you got to stay with the fake people that's around you. You know what I'm saying? The way that you know that you are who and what you are is when you can actually not participate in certain things that people expect of you. You understand? You got to allow yourself the space to have faith in you. You understand? Know what your government, what your internal government is. You know what I mean? Know what your internal nationality is before you go file a paperwork with somebody else to get some white man and recognize some shit. He just going to fight you on anyway. We ain't supposed to be filing no paperwork with them. It's 2012. You mean to tell me people are still filing UCC statements to get their own shit popping? Knowing damn well when everywhere, every other place you look, these so-called pseudo-indigenous nations is popping shit. The Lakota, the Seminole, the rest of these niggas, even some of the Garifunas out there in Honduras and places like that. They going hard for their rights and all of that. What are black people doing? What are we doing over here? We going to police academy, right? We joining National Guard and shit, right? That's what we doing, right? We joining the Red Cross, the Peace Corps and shit like that, you know, trying to become a Rhodes Scholar, some other shit. That's what we do. Like right now, as we speak, right now, there's a war going on against Somalia and Kenya. Right now. You understand? People shooting, killing each other right now. Black people in mass shooting, killing each other. Why? Because the United States used Kenya and United States is using its power or influence through Kenya, through the whole matriarch system or whatever, to be able to create a system where they start to move into Mali and create this whole religious war. Because the Malian people are saying that the Kenyan people is invading us on behalf of the United States because they want to create a Christian state in Mali. And the Malians ain't having it. You know what I'm saying? And they're using the Kenyans to do it. Why? But most of the Kenyans, they ain't Christian. A lot of them ain't Christian. A lot of them is atheists. A lot of them is Muslim too. But some countries in Africa got it together more than other countries. So they have problems with Somalia. They have problems with Mali because the pseudo-Malian government is trying to make deals and inroads with the Soviet Union and China and Pakistan and other nations that's trying to break away from the dollar. So, of course, they want to lock them down, so they're going to use the Kenyans. The same way that they're using the Eritreans to keep reinvading Ethiopia, and then using the Ethiopians to then go invade the Sudan as Coptic Christians to turn it into some pseudo-Templar Christian war in Africa. You think these white women and these white men and these white women that's birthing that's adopted these black babies from Africa, you think they're doing anything politically to stop that shit? No. I'm starting to feel that a lot of these black babies that they're taking out of the continent like that are actually political children of political members of the society, of whatever nation they're trying to come into. And basically ransoming the kids, saying we're going to raise them the opposite way and let you play ball with us the way we want. Like, didn't you see the movie Taken? I saw that. They're about to make Taken too. And again, that nigga in that movie, he was playing a character who worked for them, CIA. He worked for these niggas, and they still abducted his daughter. So if that's the case, why wouldn't they, based upon your Masonic affiliation, do something to your son ritualistically? Mr. Martin, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm doing the knowledge to how all this stuff is playing out, and it don't necessarily seem on the up and up, man. It never is. But the long-term goal is what you got to do the knowledge to, man. Because the shit in your face is just the stuff that they're doing right now to kind of like make you think it's one thing when it's really something else. So they got African nations invading other African nations, acting like the people who's hacking and killing all these African nations are basically doing that on behalf of themselves. Like Mali all of a sudden wants to invade, Kenya. All of a sudden, out of all of the time that they've been dealing with shit, now they just want to invade Kenya all of a sudden. Like, come on, man. Why now? Why? Why now? Why can't you wait to do some shit, right? It just so happens to be we have a Kenyan president, right? So that's going on. Then, connected to that, we got our own version, modern-day version of the whole Iran-Contra thing through this whole Fast and Furious thing, which is really tied up to the Black Panther thing. When the Black Panthers stopped them white folks from going and voting in that election and was standing in front of the voting poll, that was to create the puppet idea that there is a such thing as reverse racism, that we as black people can disenfranchise Caucasian people from events or whatever it is that we want to do with them and shit. So when the Panthers were stopping people from coming in and voting, that potentially was reminiscent to what the Klan did during the time of the Selma bus riots and all of that voting scams and all of that, when they was trying to stop black people from becoming politically viable in the South. But now it's reversed. Now we got the black people trying to keep the white people from voting for a white man. This is how ill they got this thing worked out. So Holder, because he didn't go and prosecute none of the Black Panthers behind that, partially because of his relationship, his plausible or unplausible, depending on what you read, relationship with Malik Zulu Shabazz, they wind up burying the shit. So the white people were waiting just for another scandal to come out that they could go ham on this nigga. So that's when it came out with Holder now, basically saying that he basically put up mad guns and arms for them to go to entrap Mexican cartelian drug dealers, but instead they just wound up selling the guns and the drugs to the drug dealers, and the drug dealers took the guns and the drugs, or specifically the guns, and used the guns and shit to kill American police officers. You know what I'm saying? So essentially they're saying that the federal government basically paid to have American police officers, specifically from Arizona and places like that, killed on the taxpayer dollar because of this scam that they had running called Fast and the Furious. That happened, again, to coincide with a movie, again, called Fast and Furious. That's up to number 6 now, right? Of which one of the people involved in the whole shit is named Ludacris. So it shows you, again, symbolically, allegorically, what this whole thing is really manifested into. You know what I'm saying? And so to get back at Holder, you know what I'm saying, they want to now indict him. They want him to be indicted in a sense by Congress. Now, they've already indicted Geithner. They've already indicted Bill Gates. They've already indicted Mark Zuckerberg. They've already indicted, what's his name? What's the other one? George Bush. They've already indicted Dick Cheney. All these people, Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, all these people have been indicted already. They sitting in sealed indictments right now. They sitting under house arrest. Niggas is out front their house watching them. Because, again, just like prior to 9/11, we're on the verge of one of the biggest so-called white-collar crime busts in history. Now, the last time that was supposed to happen on September 11th, 2001. You know what I'm saying? And you know what happened with that. And everybody forgot. So now here it is again. They're about to basically do it in. Now what happens? All of a sudden, Syria shoots down a plane in Turkey. Now the thing about it is that the Turks and the Syrians potentially are allies through the Russians. Okay? The reason why they're in Syria, again, is because they're trying to push the Russians out of there so that when they make the move for Pakistan, the only people they got to really deal with is China. They don't want to have to deal with Russia and China and Pakistan and Iran. They don't want to do that. So they have to fulfill an obligation. So the obligation is We need to get rid of the Syrian government stability, even though we have been supporting the Assad government for the past 20 years or trying to support them through favor. But what's been happening is that the Soviets have always beat them to the punch out there. Soviets got over 100 bases in Syria right now. You know what I'm saying? So this is not about Syria at all. This is about the United States trying to get their shit popping against Russia in order to pop off this World War V, World War IV, World War III, 4, 5 shit. However, they can't necessarily do that because they don't have no money. They don't have no money to do none of this. Okay. They don't wash, well, it was in the sink, so that's what you say. Okay, well, it was in the sink, I'm telling you right here. To a point where it was a situation where people started to create reasons to get into these countries and do all of this. So like I said, it boils down to the United States becoming isolated. So like I said, if Greece torpedoes the deal, that means that everybody in the EU basically is going to have to agree to bail out Greece, which then means Greece might become a dependent state on them. And if they fall into default, that may mean that Greece may have to pay or outsource or rent aspects of its national infrastructure to be able to pay back whatever loan. So that means that if they fall in default, then potentially that means that they might have to sell the Acropolis. They may have to sell some of the monuments, again, of Western civilization. But again, I find it ironic that if they use the fictitious Greek culture as the basis for Western civilization, it would be interesting that at the fall of Western civilization, Greece would be the same country that would be the linchpin to start that downward spiral. Which again is a Saturnian influence because Venus is the goddess of Greece as well as Demeter. And Demeter and all of these things again are working in tandem symbolically against the greater United States as an Antichrist government. So this translates here to America as a means of financially now trying to create a buzz within the infrastructure to start to fluctuate more currency into the waning society. So one way they're going to try to do this is try to create different new taxes now that the tax shelter Bush thing that didn't work out. So they have to create a new tax. Another linchpin to get this popping again was this dude's health care plan. But the health care thing put him in a direct contravention against the Jesuits in the form of the abortion clause and getting Catholics now to pay for abortions. That's like getting Catholics to pay for their own abortions is like getting Muslims to pay for the slaughter of the pig they're going to eat at Ramadan. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not something that works like that. But again, society is about retarding and putting everybody into an alternate state of their true self. So the women need to be the men need to be the women, the dogs need to be the cats need to be the dogs. You understand? Everything got to be opposite in order for you to live in a progressive society. Watch them words, man. They're getting niggas caught up. So all this devilment, all this idolatry, all of this stuff that's been popping off is all symbolic or symptoms of the greater calamity on the way, which is how are they going to be able to lock down the rest of the world and you niggas too? They can't do it. So that means that this has to be a portion of society that is portioned from that. But to find ourselves in that position, we have to, again, make clear delineations as to what we're going to deal with, what we're not going to deal with. So look for another major push of police brutality things coming in after the whole Rodney King killing thing, because now his wife is saying she can't go to the funeral because of some bullshit behind that. Because the thing about Rodney King was he was an excellent swimmer. Excellent swimmer, they said. Just like Martin Luther King's brother. So it was a great swimmer. Who the hell, what black person get a swimming pool and don't know how to swim? Black people don't do that. if we get a pool and we're going to pay for it, we're going to swim in it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that was another one. Yes, I sent her another one. That's another one she did. It looks like that one, though. It's just she may have propped him out, but I don't know why she would do that. But that's almost good, though, that it's just me and you. You know what I mean? So all of that's going on, like I said. And as it stands, they're about to talk about another aspect of just debt and the unemployment thing altogether. To me, personally, I think that's due to some of the reorganization in the UCC thing that they're doing. Because so many people putting liens on them through UCC that what they're now trying to do is reorganize the transmitter utility aspect of that. So that way, if you take control of the straw man as a beneficial owner, they don't lose no money. Because as it stands, when you, through a UCC1, create a security agreement, and then you have the commercial security agreement, power of attorney, all that stuff to do that, the U.S. corporation at the term, that was created at the term, at the point of your birth, which would be your name in all capital letters, that U.S. corporation now gets listed on their books as a disregarded entity. We were the first ones to put out there, myself, Selena, and Myra Shira L, bless the dead, all those years ago, put out there when we discovered the birthplace of everybody's straw man, which, again, is 55 Water Street for those people that don't know. So, again, that creates another situation where people are now having to refile paperwork that they already refiled, which, again, is locking you into the system even more with these people, the back and forth ebb and flow of it. And like I said, it has its usage, but if we really want to use it, a national ministry that's recognized by everybody got to be consolidated and agreed upon. I'm sorry. Because until then, it's just going to be a bunch of different people coming up, as opposed to one. Like when you watch the movie 2012, right? At the end of the movie, when they went to the Ark, right? Everybody didn't say, hey, I want to get my own individual boat. Like, do the knowledge. When niggas went to 2012 at the end of the movie, and they went to go to the Ark because they wanted to get saved, right? Everybody wanted to get on that one Ark. No, it's not. Nobody wanted to be on that one. Everybody wants to be on that one Ark. Everybody didn't say, hey, everybody didn't say, oh, let me bring my Ark. Oh, let me get my raft. Oh, let me get my speedboat. Yo, let me follow you on my yacht. Nobody did that. Everybody was killing to get on that one boat because they knew that one boat was going to be the boat to take them where they needed to go and protect them from the deluge, right? So think about that in terms of UCC, right? You got a bunch of everybody who's claiming descent from the same nation, but everybody's claiming it individually. How can then you say that you in one nation? You know what I'm saying? How can you then say that you in one nation per se if each one of those nations, again, have their own way of doing it? That's why I think we had to consolidate the republic back in the days towards the turn of the mid or late 1700s, because there were so many indigenous nations that was already free here that all of them didn't necessarily have dealings with the colonial powers, meaning those Moriscos and Moriscos and their Freemasonic Caucasian serfs who they were using to make money in the old world through the old agricultural system, as well as the four serfs. So, look from that now, why? So we're going to bring the side of that balance. This is the mountain. Hiawatha together. The story of Hiawatha and Hiawatha. These are your ancient ancestors that represent the story of the Heru that this so-called, but this is the version that was told to the Iroquois kids. So Degandawada and Hiawatha were both two great warriors that represented both sides of the nation at the time. Hiawatha wanted Degandawada to recognize him, but Degandawada was Degandawada was a little older. So Hiawatha felt fight, kidnapped down to fight. They start fighting. And after a while, it gets so hectic that people start fighting. So it gets almost so hectic that when in the process of the battle, one of the old elders winds up getting offed. So Degandawada and Hiawatha decide that they need to get together. And the symbolic ritual of them getting together was that he went and got an olive branch and handed it to Degandawada. Degandawada handed Hiawatha his tomahawk, and Hiawatha took the tomahawk in humbleness and buried it. This is where the term bury the hatchet comes from. This is why the white man used the term the Hatchet Act or the Hatch Act when he started to annex and start into the further history of the denationalization of us as original people. You understand? So specifically speaking, this could be the same story of the Narmors or Narma and Menes coming together in the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. Whenever a nation is about to get together, there's always a civil war. So technically, they almost feel like they need a civil war to be able to circumvent and bring together their so-called new world, or the new world as they see it. You know what I'm saying? So these wars, war to them is a necessary advent of peace. They believe that you cannot have peace without war. That's why your man can get the Nobel Peace Prize and in the next week commit 275,000 troops to a war, and nobody say nothing. Because you and I and the whole world is involved in these bullshit satanic rituals that these dudes stay flipping, and because we don't believe it's real, so we listening to what fucking some rapper is saying about the quote-unquote Illuminati instead of reading the damn book, instead of doing the research yourself. Because when you really do the research yourself, you start to realize that if it means the black nobility, then really they're talking about people who married into your family, took your money, and then put you out on the street. So technically, that's still your money, right? But they took what you left behind, which was a national body politic and a tax shelter called the federal government, to perpetually keep them in a position to keep you from waking up to what it is you put them in charge of. There's 1,001 books on it. There's 1,001 movies on it. They tell you every day. But again, we're looking at the forest for the trees. We're not doing the knowledge to what lives inside of that. Because inherently there's more of us than, quote-unquote, them. Everybody knows it. Talking about 1% of a global population. The planet Earth is 196,940,000 square miles. You understand? With over 4 billion 400 million people. And that was as quoted by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in 1914, the calculated end of the double civilization. So really, we're at the end of the 70-plus year grace period that they've already effectuated, which is why all of the checks and all of the bills are coming due, and they can't pay. So the rest of the world wants to move into a harmonious, non-debt financial strata, and they want to keep the world where it is, because in that world with no debt, they can't run nothing. So the military has to become the most important part of the government. Because whenever a government becomes corrupt, the military gets the most funding. Because you keep the military happy, because those are the people who have to morally compromise themselves to be able to become special forces, people like this, to go into hospitals in Bahrain and throw babies out of incubators and stab sick people and stuff like that, and then blame it on somebody else. That's what intelligence really is. It's making other people believe that somebody else did it. That's what all intelligence really is. That's why they call it spy games. Or that's why they call it games in theory. It's just that in these games, you could die. You know what I'm saying? So, again, what we stress here in Super Radio is a honest outlook as to how we can rectify our situation and to be real as a pleading to the nature of our people to really keep it real. If you're really not down with it, then don't waste time with it. Stay in their system. You can do it for 10 minutes. And that's, when I say that's it, it's it. So, this is kind of like what it's coming down to, folks. So in America, like I said, this translates into more propaganda and more psychological operations in the form of pseudo-zombie apocalypses, police brutality, killings, sex in schools. I mean, you have to understand, you're sending your children to schools where as young as 3 years old, children are being arrested and taken in handcuffs and fingerprinted, where the parents got to come down and get them out of jail for instances like throwing paper airplanes or aiming their finger in the form of a gun, playing cowboys and Indians like in the form of, and using their finger as a form of a gun, or creating a paper gun and chasing each other with it. Both kids get arrested. Bullying, getting hit in the head. 2 kids got in a fight. The kid that hits him in the head gets charged with assault. Kid is only 7 years old. And you mean to tell me I'm supposed to send my children to places like this, to a place like that? I may not have had much of a choice with the first 2 based upon dealing with the sanity of the women I had them with and their families, but with this one, nah, man. You gotta learn from your losses, man. You know what I'm saying? And always know that there's always that the more you learn from the things that you have had to sometimes give up or haven't had a ability to fully grasp or be a part of, because a lot of us come from families where we grew up and we were really close to our families, and then once we got knowledge, it's like you became the worst thing in the world. When instances like that happen, those are usually signs that something was promised, or you may have been promised in the family line somehow or somewhere, or something with you specifically with it, because you're the one with the consciousness. So whoever's blessed with the consciousness in the family is the one that's going to take it all away. Even in families that have predominantly conscious people in them. Like you could have a child and raise them in the conscious and all that, and the child, for whatever reason, want to be in the street, which a lot of people in the conscious community can identify with. And then they get to a point where they realize, hey, this ain't the way. I got to go back to what's really, you know what I mean, how I was really raised. Some people got to go through that. But nobody has to go through that. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference. Yet, what we don't realize is that the same way there's a certain prescribed time that a child goes through a development, so let's say at a certain time they're supposed to talk, at a certain time they're supposed to walk, at a certain time or whatever. There's the same way in this consciousness and awareness, what we would call 13th conscious awareness, where you go through things that are a common aspect of what everybody goes through who is going through the same metamorphosis. So you go from the whole thing of being an 85 to then not. And then you go through the whole thing of trying to feel like you need to get everybody on and, you get upset. Then you go from the anger, from the upset to almost despair because you start to see how much resistance you get from your own people. And then that, and some people can turn to apathy because then it makes you even more thing because then you start realizing that you can't necessarily depend on the people who look like you to get it done, even though this is supposed to be done for and by people who look like you. That is physical reality. It is a natural conundrum that can never truly be mastered until one leaves it. You see what I'm saying? So those people who do things to, like, people you've seen all these pictures of Nicolas Cage and some of these actors, Johnny Depp and Keanu Reeves, from, like, paintings from the 1500s and stuff like that, and they all look like the same, or you might see an old daguerreotype image of, let's say, Nicolas Cage from the Confederacy era, and then you see a picture of him now. It's like, oh, well, they on that immortal shit. And it's like, no, they're not, because they don't have the ability to do that. What you might be seeing is a manifestation of a genetic line or a genetic lineage, or you might be seeing it from the perspective of people who have done things, unnatural, satanic things, to prolong their life here. This is what things like vampirism and lupinism and things like that come into, But these are areas of the macabre that we as natural, original people, whatever, or people in the 21st century look at as myths. You know what I'm saying? But I remember seeing a image of a mechanized mosquito, like a robot mosquito with a camera in it, way back in a comic book, in a Punisher comic book in like 1985. You know what I'm saying? So it was a myth then, right? But the other day now I'm on Facebook and somebody posted a picture of the damn insect that they've created in real life, in real time, that, again, is something made real. Therefore, the question then becomes, which came first, the chicken or the egg? You know what I'm saying? Did they have it back then and they released it in the comic books first, so that way by the time they released it in real life, people wouldn't be shocked? Or did it not exist in the world until they put it in a comic book, and there was enough collective minds of energy and people doing the knowledge to the possibility of it existing, which then opened up the potential possibility for it to exist, for them to exploit, to then make it exist? I think it's the latter. But again, that's just my opinion based on what I know about magnetohydrodynamics, which, again, is not a whole lot, but it's enough to get the basic grasp of what the concept of it really is. And that is how the energies of magnetic polarities repulse and attract energies of unlike and like magnetic and repulsive polarity. So again, spirituality has to be a natural component of the time-space continuum to exist in perpetuity. Because if there is something seen, then there has to be something unseen that powers it. So you don't see my brain, but you know that there is a brain in there that is piloting or moving the body. So what if you can create, through satanic ritual, sexual ritual, deviant ritual, a way to force a person's personality, the dominant personality, out of their mind and then implant a new or separate personalities that then can each follow an agenda, to then that can keep that true agenda away from the dominant personality that was forced into a third or fourth or fifth position within the psyche of the mind. I wouldn't know that as somebody just seeing this person walk down the street. But there are more people out there. They would do a psychological test on people where they would beat them up, torture them, put them in rooms, and then the strobe lights on, and then they would come in the white coats looking like regular people, but they would say to a person, hey, I'm an alien, I'm a gray. And then they would leave, and then they would come back. And every time the person would see them, whatever, boom, they would see gray. So whenever a person would see a white coat or associate the white coat, they would know that the gray was actually in control of the person. So they had experiments where they would making people believe that they were actually robots, that they didn't have real human insides, that inside of them was really like mechanical devices, because what they wanted the person to do was to believe it so much that they would have to see it for themselves, and then get into things like cutting and stimulation to feel something, because they have been turned off to their feelings because they have been programmed to believe that they're robots. Post-hypnotic suggestion is very easy. Post-hypnotic suggestion is the basis of the advertising industry itself. Post-hypnotic suggestion was perfected again in Germany amongst these German scientists, or I would say re-perfected again by these German scientists who studied the ways and actions of the red-haired Tibetan monks, who then got a lot of their knowledge from the ancient Moors of Malaga and Salamanca and places like that, in the mountains of Syria and Persia, who they called the Hashemites, or the Hashishim, also known as the Assassin, or the Temple of the Assassins, that you see in the book by Wasserman, as well as the video game Assassin's Creed. So you see how it all still relates? In regards to whether we realize it or not, we still participate in aspects of our own oppression based upon our participation unwillingly in most times, but still having to participate in what we understand as physical reality in order to exist. Because in this world, anything without a name does not exist. Think about your life now and look in the room or wherever you're at. Everything around you, everything that you're wearing, everything that you has a name. There's not one thing around you that you could think of that don't have a name. The only thing that don't have a name really is things that haven't happened yet, but that falls under the name the future. So even that has a category. You understand? This is an auspicious time for us to be able to recalibrate how it is we see the functionary protocols of things that we've been doing for the past maybe, 30-plus years that the conscious community has existed. There's a time for us to quantify all of this now into something that is not necessarily going to take us to the mainstream, but is going to allow other mainstream black folk to know that there's another aspect of black consciousness that they haven't really even begun to understand yet. And what I know about real occultists, they don't really get caught up with the law like that. When you really into certain aspects of the occult, when I say the occult, I mean hidden things. But if you know that all of the things that are not being said that are hidden are based on you, then that means anything hidden or occult is then really an aspect of your history, something then relating directly to you. So is it really about Baphomet, or is Baphomet really, or was really a code at the time for Muhammad? And that back then they may have rather been known, and white boys would rather have been known as Satanists than Muslim sons. Think about it. Solomon Rushdie alluded to aspects of that in the book Satanic Verses, in which they put the fatwa out on him that still exists, that he could be killed. But again, he was an MI6 agent from the door. You know what I mean? But it still don't change the fact that he was still dropping certain things in that book that the mainstream Sunni Arabized Philistine Muslims wouldn't necessarily want the so-called black Africans to realize, because then they would understand and remember their true origin and how this whole Islamic thing manifested or where it came out of. When they do the call of prayer, every call to prayer that was sung after Bilal, peace be upon him, was done in the style that Bilal did it. So that means that every call to prayer from that point on was basically done in the voice of the original man. And you're going to tell me that the original people are not the originators of that so-called religion that they call Islam? I'm a Moor, so I understand what Asaf Law and Master is, but the average so-called black American, they're not going to know that deep. So they only going to go by what the institutions have said that they are, because we don't have no constitution of our institutions of our own that are set and recognized by everybody. Whether or not you are a Christian, a Muslim, or 5% or whatever, you could go to Morehouse and get an education. You know what I'm saying? That's how we used to have it in Grenada and Alhambra and over here in the universities in what's now the Grand Canyon, in the temples of Isis that's still there. We had all that popping, have all that popping. So everybody was coming to learn. Timbuktu, everybody was coming and getting knowledge. And we wasn't stingy. We wasn't charging niggas like that. You just had to have the money to get out there. It's only when Oxford, which was a Moorish institution created by the then noble family or Moorish royal family connected to the House of Burgess over here in America, when it was taken over, and then after the fire of 1666 and they reinstituted and everything, that's when it became a thing that became one of the first institutions globally for free Masonic Caucasian males to go and learn and study. Places like that, Ingolstadt University, Yale. And they were very exclusive. Therefore, because they were catering to a clientele, an ideology that they were trying to manifest that would eventually be known and labeled as white supremacy in our era. But now that's even played out. White supremacy has been reorganized into globalism. See what I'm saying? That's the new version of it. But it's all the same thing. It's all tyranny. But what is the phrase? At times, the tree of liberty must be watered with the blood of patriots. Right? Thomas Jefferson. A slave owner. Right? Who was a slave himself. Orchestrator of the greatest land grab in history, illegal land grab in history, the so-called Louisiana Purchase, that led the precedent and the pathway for the eventual Holocaust in our era, which was the Katrina event. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the things allegedly that's in the sealed indictment too against Bush, that they was down with all of that. That's why I didn't go to Switzerland that time, because they said they would arrest him. So look for more stringent measures to be employed in state governments as they now try to obfuscate more control from the federal government, because the federal government, based upon the attacks of the so-called Republicans against it now, are going into a phase where they're going to try to expand the negative outlook of the country's possibility. You know, this whole scandal with the Fast and Furious thing, all of that is going to be amplified because they're looking to bring something in right before the election. But as I see it in terms of the whole thing, I think they could flip an October surprise and try to flip Jeb Bush up in there and get everybody to jump on him before December if they really want to, like, do a switch in midstream game. But I think the plan is to get Homeboy back in there and then, you know, start to really mess with him towards the second phase of his term. Because remember, they never really wanted a black man to be president like that. That's why they chose him. They wanted somebody who was malleable enough. So remember, this is an albino brotherhood. They not really, you know, anybody that's not of that, you know, the bond is the satanic application. So they got to do things that's going to be conducive to that. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. The more you start to get in the conscious, then reach the phase where you start to realize that a lot of people who are phenotypically Caucasian will present themselves to help you, right? But that don't mean that black people aren't. It just means that you don't understand how things are moving. You attract the opposite of what you are. So when you strove to get the knowledge, you strove to get it to raise your consciousness. But to do that, you are repelling anything that is not about that. So those original people that are not trying to raise the vibration of their melanin to the point of a crescendo are naturally going to be against you and almost a bit to stop you from doing that. And because they are the ones who are predominantly like you, it seems that there are more of them against you than the quote-unquote white people who are producing themselves to help you. But that's part of the G too. You know what I'm saying? So again, the best teacher is the one that you learn from. You understand what I'm saying? The one that you get the most use from is the one that is the most beneficial to you, regardless to what color or manifestation they are. Because a teacher always don't necessarily have to even be a human. My cat has taught me shit. You understand? It don't talk, but it do. You know? Birds have taught me things. Babies have taught me things. But now I'm adverse to receiving knowledge, wisdom, and understanding from whatever source it derives from. Just because it may be a demonic source don't mean that I'm demonic or I'm going to be possessed by that demonic force for doing the knowledge to it. I become possessed by it or to it based upon my intent of getting the knowledge anyway. So if I want to know, so if I read a book on demonology to find out the name that the Fraternal Order of Police use to satiate the guard that protects them on the badge, then my intent is protection against the evil. You know what I'm saying? So whatever blinds was put in the text for me to absorb to turn me to the opposite is automatically inhibited by whatever psychic dampeners that I've already set in place to block that from me, that manifested the instant that I decided on why I was going to do the knowledge to it. That's called in a book called The Divine Pymander, that's called the Instantaneous Realization of the Sublime. There's a movie that everybody should check out called Sublime. There's a movie that came out a couple of years ago, but get it on DVD. Do the knowledge to it. This is very interesting. Okay, so we get into a call. 610, you on Super Heru Radio?
What's up, Aseer? It's Quinn. What's up?
Hey, what's up, King? How you doing?
What's up, man? I haven't heard from you for a while. Yeah, man, I just want to, this may be slightly off topic, but I think it's interesting. Like, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with, these alternative historians and also / white New Agers. I know you're familiar with Peter Moon and the whole Mind Talk then.
Uh-huh.
And are you familiar with someone named Stuart Swirlo?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was doing a lot of research, just looking on books and stuff. So I was gonna, looking to do something. So I was, on Amazon.com and just, creating a book list so I can, research. And I came across this book,
right.
And I read it. Then I looked up the contents, and
you believe he came from hate?
Yeah. Well, I started Googling him, right, and and I found out that he said that basically that the Anunnaki, right, guys from Samaria or whatever, they actually bred blacks to be slaves, and that that's why everyone remembers us as slaves. And that really pissed me off, moved me off, because for one, he's so historically inaccurate. It's pathetic. Then, because I actually contacted him on it's a YouTube account. So you can contact him on YouTube. He's also on Facebook, right? And on my old YouTube accounts, I went off on him. He goes, well, he replied saying, well, this information is not from me. I got it from somebody from the Illuminati or some inside source, and I know it to be true. That's what he said. So, I mean, that really aggravated me.
Well, one.
What you take, because Stuart Swirlo, that's the only one. David Icke is also a stink. I got some of the books. You know what I'm saying? They basically, David Icke, Kazarian, all these cats basically, claim, that whites created all world civilizations. So what's your specific take on this clown Stuart Swirlo and his version of the Anunnaki creating us blacks to be slaves? Whatever. What's your take on that? I mean, that's ridiculous, because, he ain't the only one. Matter of fact, he went to Africa. This guy went to Africa, Kenya. Tell all people this shit, man.
Kenya, right? Same Kenya I'm talking about, right? Coincidence, right?
What's that?
Yeah. The same place Obama's from, right? Excuse me, the president's from, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said Kenya, the same place that they're waging a war against Mali right now, and the same place that the so-called president's from, and the same place that they're using to take over the continent through Africa. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying he actually went there, telling our people this. He actually went to Kenya. I didn't watch the video, but he went to Africa. He went to Kenya, Stuart Swirlo did, and apparently he's telling our people this shit over there. And I got from him that, God forbid, that our people actually believe in this shit, man. That they're actually bred to be slaves. I mean, that's disgusting. Then he then top that off, right? With Michael Kelvin's book, The Temple of the African Gods, right? I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah,
about and basically how he implied that, once again, he gave some else, once again, gave credit to some Sumerians for doing that shit, because what, also back then our people were also were also thinking gold back then. You know what I'm saying? So we had like high technology tools or they were iron. But here they go again, giving credit to some mythical race from outside of Africa. You know what I'm saying? So what is your take on these clowns like David Icke and Stuart Swirlo?
Well, one, David Icke is an MI6 agent, and he was a self-declared member of the same Great White Brotherhood that he is putting books out against. Stuart Swirlo is a mind control multiple who is under the jurisdiction of the Air Force, Navy Intelligence. And they both are arms of the New Age movement that are used to justify the genocidal austerity tactics of people in the so-called green New Age movement. having people like Swirlo and Ike allow certain people who may be of affluence to get into things like the green movement and stuff like that. But then if you're not into taking care of the earth, then you should be killed. You see what I'm saying? This allows that type of mind state to exist in strata, because then they use pseudo-scientific jargon to justify everything. And because the so-called African people themselves of certain nations know that they have allowed themselves to, or were infested by devils, a lot of the elders who fought against that were all killed. So in most of these countries, for the past since, let's say, remember USA for Africa? Remember that?
Yes.
From that point on, and maybe even, and I would say even before that, going all the way back to the first wars in Angola, going all the way to that, from that point on, specifically in our time frame, from the USA, from Africa days to now, that those people who are born there have been generationally killed every 10 to 15 years. So the population there only gets to be anywhere between, infant to maybe 13 or 12 before something crazy happened, and then maybe if they survive, you know what I mean, as a multiple amputee or something, whatever, and they give birth to another generation of all that, because this is to destroy the future of the melanin strain or the melanin gene in the so-called African continent, or dilute it enough to allow cohabitation by the so-called mulatto children of the affluent white, quote-unquote, people and black people who, from over here, who want to go over there and repopulate it all. While over here, this place is plunged into some type of urban sprawl or some type of urban warfare shit. So he's just really promoting propaganda that is a bastardized version of the Yaqub story that we had already known as fact, true and living fact, from people like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Clarence 13X, peace be upon him, and so forth and so on, Khalid Muhammad, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So my thing with us, me and you, is that when you see clowns like this and go in, once you start to do the background of who's putting this stuff out, it all basically goes back to the same form, the same people. So because all of these people, like Swirlo specifically, has talked about how he's been, you know what I mean, pitted against his family and shit like that under mind control and stuff like that, to sell books too, but to also perpetuate the idea of his latent importance to the overall scheme. Because the same Aryan people that he's saying that he's a part of, he don't look like any of that. Neither do David Icke. Blonde hair, blue eyes, that's not Swirlo. He looked like a Jew. Or like a fat Italian guy. So either way, nationally wise, just like when Hitler was talking his shit, he didn't look like anything that he was saying that he could produce, because it wasn't about that. It was about retarding the human species to create a mythical aspect or antithesis to what already exists, me and you. Because in the end, just like in Samaria and everywhere else, they worship the black man's penis and the black woman's vagina. That's what they do. That's what they want. They want to always be in between you and your woman in the three-way. That's white America. That's what they want. You know what I'm saying? And when you know that that's what it is, you don't have to take it personal that these people are out here spouting that, because any black people who believe that shit, they are that. So therefore, you don't have to feel responsible for them. So if you think about it, they're really doing us a favor. They're really getting people to believe shit about us that's not true, to lead them astray, which then gives us what? More time to get our shit together, right?
Right.
So more power to them. You know what I'm saying? Keep lying to these niggas. Keep getting these niggas caught up. Keep tricking them. And I'm talking about the black ones that's doing it too. The Creflo Dollars and the rest of these dudes. Keep doing it, man. Because that has nothing to do with me and you. That actually makes it better for me and you, because then anybody that's down with that, you already know. You ain't got to waste time talking about, bloodline and history, and you know what I'm saying? You can keep it light. Talk about rapping. You know what I'm saying? Don't deal with it and keep it moving, you know what I'm saying? Because they're not really worth it at this point. You know what I'm saying? That's just my opinion, though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what they... Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, they agents, man.
Yeah, I figured they were, man, because it's just like, the information they put out, like, it really is kind of funny because I saw one of the videos you did, in the video where you mentioned Jordan Maxwell, Peter Moon, Alex Jones.
Yeah,
after I saw the video, I said, Jordan Maxwell, David Icke, are you familiar with Michael Tazarian?
Yeah.
He's another. Oh, he's very racist. Man, he's very racist. If you I really want to come at him because he actually he badmouthed Chick Anna Diop, called him a charlatan and all this stuff, man. But he could do that because he could do that because he know that we're not gonna come and take his head for that. See, if Khalid was alive, you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of shit wouldn't happen if certain people was here. That's why they strategically took certain people out. You know what I'm saying? At a certain period. You know what I'm saying? Because they have something called Conspiracy Con. Are you familiar with that? It's every year somewhere in California. And all of them, David Icke, Swallow, all these motherfuckers, all these clowns, man, go there.
Because they work together. We could learn shit from them because they work together. They get their story straight together. They don't come out and try to bash each other and say this and that. The nigga who did that was William Cooper. William Cooper came out of all them niggas. You see what happened to him.
William Cooper.
You know what I'm saying? So he's a real nigga. There's another actor. There was an actor named Ron Silver. I don't know if he's dead or not, but I heard he was dead. But then I heard Dahmer was alive, so who knows? But this guy came out against him too. Charlie Sheen came out against him too. You know what I'm saying? And you see, how it went with him.
I've seen that.
You know what I'm saying? So it's all part of the theater. This is the theater of war. This is not a real war. This is a theater. So you got to remember, these niggas is playing a part in the acting. And because we don't have, again, a solidified base and institution of our own, you know what I'm saying? That is multi-ideological. Just like them. We can't make that happen. So, not that we can't make it happen, it hasn't manifested totally in the way I think it could. But whether or not it hasn't, I know that it will, but I know it's going to happen for those people who choose it to happen for them, and that's not going to be everybody. So if we start to almost become indifferent and start to allow people to really do them, really let people, when you give people advice on shit and they play themselves and they come back to you for the shit and they play themselves and come, yo, stop doing all that, man. Tell it what it is straight up and keep it moving. Don't be there babysitting people and all of that and trying to hold their hand and all that because they're not doing that for you. And to me, that's the highest form of love because you're not enabling them. You're not trying to find out what the reason or the excuse is for them not to just be right. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, sometimes niggas is just wrong, and they do wrong shit, and then, like, when you call niggas out, then, or when they try to call you out, and then, okay, I'll cop to it, then it's like you take out the controversy. If there's no controversy, it's almost like people don't believe it's real. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost like take when Nas and Jay-Z was going through their thing as an example. Nas was about to really, like, totally destroy him. This dude, I saw some shit where he had an animatronic doll made of this dude with prosthetic face that had clothes and everything that he was going to actually hang Lynch. So that way when he was rhyming ether, the thing would be twitching. You know what I mean? As if he would have done that, it was over. So naturally, the deal has to come in where he has to offer. Now he knew it, because at the time I believe that Nas still had an aspect of his soul. You know what I mean? So in the process of that, the deal, in a sense, benefited Jay because it allowed him not to have Ether played really like that. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because now he was cool with the nigga who did it, because if then Nas did it, he would have looked like he was starting to beef with him. And this is why Jay, or whoever's handling him, is a very good strategist. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's obviously thinking, whoever that person is obviously thinking 5-6 moves ahead to be able to know how to check Nas. But again, if you know the corresponding sign of Sagittarius, the capabilities of that, and then it says the corresponding sign of Virgo, the capabilities of that, and then you get certain things to happen within certain times astrologically, you can almost make certain things happen if you want. So in that, I'm not saying Nas was duped into nothing. I'm saying he entered into it, obviously, but in the outcome, he turned out to be the one who looked whack. And that ultimately then put the so-called person in the position now to what? Ascend and sit in the what? The throne, right? In which everybody has to watch. So whether or not they understand ritualistically what's going on, I do. And it's obvious in what happened. But regardless to how dope that whole shit was able to be orchestrated to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lil Wayne came out and knocked out the sales that week. And he basically did in sales what both of them, Kanye and this dude, you know what I mean, did together. He outdid them. You know what I mean? So it shows you, again, if we look at this thing as a cosmic symbology, you know what I mean? You can look at these so-called rappers as the world does as an archetype or archetypes for agendas, you see what I'm saying, that are put into specific situations visually, sonically, to then allow the people's belief to amplify, in which now the people's orgone energy helps create a wider destiny for what this person is to experience as a representation of all of the people who believe in what that person is as their American idol. So it's a form of satanic worship by proxy in putting someone else in ritual while they now have to do what is said, because if they fall out of it, then they can also be turned into a mystery god through death. And niggas sign up for that shit every day. And that's what I'm saying. Niggas of all races, white people, Asian people, black people. And that's the real enemy. Because corporations in this new world are seen as living things. So in the old world, a corporation was a dead thing and living people were real. In the new world, the corporation is real and living people are fictitious things. You dig? So if you don't have a corporation or a business or something that you have that represents something that you can create and produce in the world yourself to interface with them with, then you fall under the jurisdiction of their 14th Amendment citizenship, which then now has been transferred over into a totalitarian corporate citizenship, which then turns you into an aspect of merchandise. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, this is the best time for us to be able to set up some real shit, but, you know.
Well, see, here's the thing, man. It's like, you know, that's why I love listening to you, because I think of all the conscious people that I spoke to, I'm not bashing nobody. I'm not bashing SETI. I didn't bash Gear. I actually spoke to SETI on the phone briefly. I like all them guys. Then like for you, Bill more of them guys. It's just that, you know, like, it's right now, it kind of seems like I'm not sure, like, you know, I don't know if, you know, if some of these conscious guys are just had their own, you know, selfish agendas, you know what I'm saying, or not. I don't understand, like, why can't we just all, I mean, I understand there's just certain people who got, you know, like, setting out Ali Muhammad and all them guys, but, like, you know, I think there's a lot of us that you can unite together and just, you know, let's all I mean, economics should be, you know, I mean, like, you know, build up, you know, commerce, you know, basically doing what Marcus Garvey did. You know what I'm saying? I don't understand why we can't copy that. You know what I'm saying? And just, you know, you know.
Right. But
you know,
look what happened to him. Look what happened to him. He wasn't that good with money. He was good with Mexican and everything else, but he wasn't that good with money. And and the nigga who was good with money came up under a Jew who basically owned him and basically got him to sell everybody out, flip the books, and get him arrested. And as the unofficial last inhabitant of prison at the Tower of London, as the legend goes, because, you know, there's other written stories that say the bullshit. But either way, this is the time I think that we have to create a whole new model, something that we haven't even thought we could necessarily do. And if we do that, we can have something to really talk about, you know. But until then, in my case, again, I'm willing to work with anybody that's willing to work with me. It's just that if I necessarily can't align myself with certain situations because I don't necessarily want to be lumped in with all of that. And I've done my best to stay away from all of that. You know what I mean? But based upon people like yourself and other people doing the knowledge to it, and myself doing the knowledge to it, this is a forum where people can come and basically say what they think without people yelling at them or cursing at them and trying to turn them into some sort of robot. I'm not with that. What you're saying is right. Yet, to make it correct, everyone who is the people, like you, would have to stop supporting it. And there's a certain group of people who are incarnated here as black people to not do shit right for the betterment of black people, but act like that. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. No matter how you try to get them out and expose them, they always going to manifest. So unless you're ready to cut the head off the snake every time it pop up, or unless you realize that the snake is really a hydra, you're going to be always swinging swords at some shit that you could just, in a sense, walk away from and set some shit up totally different. And that's what I'm striving to do. You know what I mean? That's what you're striving to do. So I know this whole theater, like I said, is going to be revealed to be just that. And it's already happening. People already see through what's going on and seeing the parallels and stuff. So, and the more that happens, the more people holler at me. So I know, you know what I'm saying? The one thing I'm not is a pushy salesman. You know what I'm saying? I let people know what's going on, what I'm doing. Hopefully they'll support me. You know what I mean? If not, then I got to do shit to support myself. That's all. That's really all we or you or anybody can do. And unfortunately, until we say we're going to do something else, create a national ministry or unified form of confederacy or whatever, it's every man for themselves. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like I said, at the end of 2012, the movie, right, everybody came and they trying to get into the one big ark. They willing to die to get into the one big ark. They not coming with their own boat, they own ark, they own schooner, they own frigate. We going to follow the ark, but we want to do it in our own boat. No, everybody want to get on that one big boat because they know that's going to be able to protect them from the waves. So until we realize that that's the option, you know what I mean? We're going to be all trying to buy yachts and shit and G5s and shit to keep up with these silly-ass niggas when they already know the time is up. They make records about that shit every day. So, power to you, my brother. Thank you for calling in, man. I appreciate it.
All right, peace, Aseer. And I have your email address, so my name is Quentin.
Email me, man.
Yeah, all right. All right, man. Peace and love, man.
Peace to you.
Peace.
So, yeah, everybody, thank you for calling in. Thank you for holding us down, always being Super Heru and Super Heru Radio. Look out for us coming to New York on July 13th at the Forbidden Planet, which is at 840 Broadway, Union Square at 7 o'clock. We're going to be there debuting the Dark Scroll 418, the world's most dangerous comic book novel. For those people who want advanced pre-orders, you can go to www.ISeerTheZucatears.com. And with the pre-order ones, they're a little more because I'm sending everybody personalized individual sketches of the characters that I'm doing myself for each order. So I'm trying to do that up until, though, July 13th. After that, they go on sale at regular price. And everybody can get them as well as on e-books through Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, all of that. You're going to have the Dark Scroll 418 and the associated materials that we have with the project. So we really want you guys to come through. Again, it's called The World's Most Dangerous Comic Book Novel. You can go to my Facebook page, Aseer Ali Cordova. Check out some of the coming attractions of it, conceptualized images of what to expect and what to look for in the comic book novel that I wrote and drawn myself. It's 575 pages, and it's real, man. And thank you guys for the donations and getting us and helping us. Those people that have, you know, it wasn't much of real life, but it was definitely helpful, and every little bit helps, and I don't want to sound ungrateful. And thank you guys for the support and keeping game, seeing how we move with certain things, and supporting us through all of the so-called ups and downs. But now we're on the way up again, and, well, I should say up higher from the up place we've already been. And I want to thank you guys for that participation. So, again, thank you for everybody in the chat for holding us down, and everybody out there listening in the archives who go back and listen consistently and thoroughly and spread the word. Thank you. So, again, also spread the word. Friday the 13th, 7 o'clock, 840 Broadway, Union Square. Take the 4, 5, 6, 7, 2, and 3. JNR 6. And I think that's it. I'm a New Yorker, you know what I mean, at heart, so I still remember the train. So, yeah, so come through, man. It's going to be dope. We're going to have everything there for you to check out. We'll have e-books, and it's first come, first served. So we're going to have a certain amount, because we only had a certain amount of dough to print up in the beginning. You know, I share with the people, so this is what's going on, why it's been taking so long to get it out, but finally we're here. So come through, support the homie. Look for, go to YouTube, type in Aseer the Duke of Tears, check out the little interview we have about the book on there, Dark Skull 418 or DS418 intro at YouTube, AseerTheDukeofTears.com. And again, thank you guys for coming through. Peace. Oh, you guys want to holler at me about the class on Wednesday? No. Want to holler at me on Wednesday? Email me at houseofl@hotmail.com. All right? Peace.